I'd like to call to order the March 6th, 2018 Lake Mills City Council. Would you all rise for the flag pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Fields?
Here.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Here.
Mr. Fritsch?
Here.
Ms. Schmidt?
Here.
Mr. Knippel? And Mr. Foster previously informed staff that he'd be unavailable for this evening's meeting.
Okay. Item number 3, correction and/or approval of the City Council minutes of February 6th. We're doing that separate. So is there a motion to approve the February 6th minutes?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. You want to call the roll?
Mrs. Fritsch?
Abstain.
Mr. Fritsch?
Yes.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Motion passed 3-0.
Okay, now we could do February 20th and 27th together because we were all here at that meeting. So I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move approval of minutes from February 20th and 27th, 2018.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. No, I don't see anybody saying there are corrections, so call the roll, please.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Okay, that takes us to correspondence. Anybody would like to start? Is anybody none on that end? You
I've
have
been
anything?
contacted by a person who owns a mobile home in the Sandy Beach Mobile Home Park, wanting to know what, if anything, the council's decided. And I referred him to either Misty or Steve or the city website for updates of whenever it's going to go on back on the agenda again. I also was contacted by the chair of the Lake Mills Town Board. They're working on a pier ordinance, and she wanted my opinion, and I did let her know that I don't speak for the city, but I gave her my personal opinion on the ordinance and said I would work with Dan.
Steve, you have anything?
No.
I did have several people stop me around town, and several people made comments I thought I should share with staff, and
Hate to be rude.
we wanted to make a comment about the senior center building that we're looking at. They said they were happy that we were looking at doing one. Their concern is that they said they thought maybe it wasn't a great idea to keep the front part, because that part, even though it's good now, will probably need work in the near future just by its age, and that maybe we should look at raising the whole thing and putting in a new building, so not just the back half is new, but the front half, the whole thing would be new. So I said I would share that at the council meeting, and that can be referred to the committee, I guess. So just think that came from several different people. Okay. And that's it for correspondence, I think. Questions and public comment, and I didn't even think about that here. I better figure out. We have no public hearing tonight. So, the public is encouraged to address the council at this time regarding items on the agenda. Public comment may also be made at this time on items that are not on the agenda if you have registered with the city clerk before the meeting has been called to order. The state's open meeting law discourages action by the council on items not listed on the agenda. Please keep your comments limited to 3 minutes and state your name and address when starting your comments, and fill out the sign-in sheet provided on the podium. And so if you'd like to speak to the council, you may go up to the podium. Do I have anybody who would like to speak?
I'm on the agenda down lower, so they
And-
can use the city. Do I speak now or wait until that?
We can let him speak at the time of the agenda, right? Yeah, I think the council will give you a chance to speak on your item.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking. Anybody else would like to speak? Okay, well, that takes care of public comment. We'll close public comment. City managers report. Steve?
There was a police department report provided in the packet. And I did have something, and I think I left it on my desk. Anyways, are there any questions?
You know, I think we've been meeting so often that we don't have anything that we don't already know about, I think. It's kind of how I feel.
Well, I did have it on the list, but one of the items that was the new notice of violation for corrosion control and meter replacement.
Okay,
So we'll be at an April 10th meeting.
okay. All right. Seeing nothing else, moving on to item 7. Acceptance of minutes of Public Works Board, November 14th, 2017. The Library Board, January 15th, 2018. Police and Fire Commission, January 18th, 2018. And the Police and Fire Commission minutes of February 5th, 2018. We will put those on file, and we'll go on from there. Item 8, council business, miscellaneous licenses. Misty, would you read that, please?
We have one tavern operator's license for Megan Ramsey.
Okay. Do I,
I move approval of the license for Megan Ramsey.
okay.
I'll second.
I'll take Steve on that one. Pretty close, though. All righty. Since we'll just go from there, you can call roll.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Okay, moving on to item B, discussion decision on acceptance of a donation from Spacesaver. Police Department will be making the presentation. Would that be you? Okay, come on over to the podium, I guess. Or are you going to be there? Okay, oh, great, thanks, Officer Matt.
Good evening, everyone. I am Captain Salk, Lake Mills Police Department.
sorry.
And basically, we were approached by Spacesaver in late 2017 about a donation for our evidence room to assist us in our storage needs, but also to promote some marketing on behalf of Spacesaver Corporation. So what I have here for you, and most of it's been provided in your council packets, I believe, is a picture of kind of our current room. And as you can see in that picture, things are kind of spread out all over the place. They're out in the open, and it's a little bit of a mess. But what we're looking at doing is what they're looking at donating to us is this system. And this picture is actually from the Fort Atkinson Police Department, where they've already donated one to them. And as you'll see, there's a number of shelving units. And what they can do is they can slide them together, slide them any different direction, and store things on there. The Lev Pro system That's what it's called for us. We'll have 7 different shelving units. They'll all be about 15 inches wide. And what we'll be able to do is store more things in less area. And then one of the features that I specifically asked for is that when you slide this unit over, there's a back on it. And then up here somewhere, they will create a locking mechanism. So when the evidence officer is done in the room for the day, we have to slide that closed, lock it, and if someone were to breach the building, to try to steal, obviously we have some things in evidence that criminals would be interested in, they would encounter this locked system. It would be another hurdle that they'd have to overcome. And from the training that I've been to as an evidence custodian, they do recommend a secondary security system, which this will help us meet. So as you can see, and the other one, not quite as much security there. So the donation value is almost $9,000.
Wow.
It will be installed at their expense, at their time. They warranty it fully. For the first year, I believe I had a warranty in your packet for you to see. And the only thing that they ask from us is to let them take photos. The before photos were theirs, and then to take some after photos to use in their marketing. So I have talked to the Captain Schultz down at Fort Atkinson Police Department. He's assured me that that is all they had to do for them was allow for the photos. There's been no testimonials, no videos or anything like that taken, just the before and after. So.
In other words, they won't have tour groups coming in and looking at them?
Yeah, it's not out of the realm of possibility that they would have somebody who might be interested in a similar system come to look at it. But that is actually a common practice in law enforcement. We've had people come here before who are designing a new police department, for example, and have wanted to walk through and see how our evidence is set up, how our garages are set up. And it's very common with our body cameras to receive a phone call that, they'll ask us how those systems work, our squad car cameras. So within the law enforcement community, it's a generally acceptable practice for guys to research purchases and go to agencies where that item they're interested in is actually being used and utilized.
Do they give you advance notice of those visits?
Absolutely.
And do you have a chance to check a background check of the person who's coming in?
Usually it's other law enforcement, so we haven't done that. We've not needed to show our evidence room specifically before. This new system may garner some interest. Fort Atkinson's system, and it's hard to maybe tell from the picture, but that's actually a freestanding system in their garage. And what they use it for is their officers have their duty bags and jackets. It's hard to see in that picture. So that when officers come on duty, they just pull it apart, they get their stuff, and then they might slide it over for someone else to get it. And this was a way for them to, in a compact area, get a lot of equipment. And while researching this project myself, I did go there and look at their system. And it's a common practice in law enforcement when people are working on their projects to share.
Well, I guess I'm just thinking with everything I've seen happening in the world that if you are showing them your evidence room, that you might want to do a background check on the person coming in to make sure that they aren't someone who has ulterior motives and decides this is a good way to, check it out. That's just me.
Sure, I understand what you're saying.
So,
Can I just
yeah,
add,
go ahead.
I think where you're going with that, Mrs. Frisch said, just to understand our evidence room is already secured, and while this project is taking place, Captain Stell has coordinated the removal of all that evidence to be secured at a separate location. So when somebody does come in and we're working on that system, putting that new system in, obviously there's not going to be any evidence because we're under
Right.
guidelines by the state, custody in effect. And so, and when other people do itself, myself, or we have Officer Wallace, are the only ones that have access to that room otherwise. And so if there is any evidence in there, nobody is allowed in there by themselves, other than one of us three. Otherwise, they have to be escorted and monitored the entire time over there. Is that?
Well, and what I was thinking is, if I was a crook, and I knew there was something in there that I would really like to get my hands on, I wouldn't mind posing as somebody and somehow and get a tour so I knew the lay of the land, so that I could come in when you aren't here and go in and get what I want. That's what I'm thinking.
This is actually, our evidence room is already, I'll go into too many details on it.
Right, please don't.
Yeah, right. It's already double secured. This would actually triple secure it.
Okay, that's good. I'm just asking
No,
because
it's a good question. It's a
you know.
good question. Highly unlikely.
Mhm,
that,
good.
Anybody would be able to get in
We want to keep it that way.
there. Absolutely.
Okay, that's all I had. So,
Okay.
does anybody else?
I've got one question for the city attorney. Any problems with the ethics on this?
Well, there is a concern about the marketing aspect of it, and that's why Captain Selk went into great length regarding, there won't be an actual endorsement by the city or anything like that someone else can rely on in the future. Ethical, we're certainly receiving a gift from a private entity. Could that or would that influence the city in the future? I don't think so, but it's worth a question. The size of the gift and the practice that is occurring here is relatively normal. I mean, businesses contact municipalities to experiment with new products all the time. So I don't see an issue. We're receiving a gift, we're acknowledging where it's coming from, we're disclosing it completely.
And again, this has been donated in the Fort Atkinson Police Department. I believe this Cambridge School District also received one, and I think there's a couple more in the area. I'd have to check my notes for that, but I think it's, it's a marketing tool for them. Obviously, we're going to follow the city guidelines on release of any information about that, and I will consult with both, Steve and Dan before anything like that occurs. That's for certain.
Okay, we should probably have a motion on the floor. We're kind of notorious for doing this a little
For
bit.
formality, I'm just going to read the title of the motion
Yes,
first.
I think that's a good idea.
City Council Motion 18-3-1-1, directing the city manager to accept the donation of a Lev Pro Realist mobile storage system from Spacesaver to the Lake Mills Police Department.
Okay. Any other discussion? Then let's get a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, now is there any other discussion? I'll get there eventually, so. Anybody else have questions or discussion? We were given good information in our packet. Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
Both, everybody, staff as well. And seeing none, I think we'll do roll call.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Okay, well, thank you for your time, and thank you for coming tonight to present,
Absolutely. Thank you all.
both of you. So, taking us to item C, discussion decision on the compost study. This is a reflection of the meetings we've been doing outside the regular council meetings, and this was asked to be put on this agenda to discuss. So let me get to that item. Do you want to read the...
City Council Motion 18-3-1-2 with reference to Lake Mills composting study.
Okay. Steve, do you want to address this, or?
No, why don't
Huh?
we make a motion?
Okay, go ahead.
I move motion 18-3-1-2.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Now, Steve.
We had a presentation at our study session on February 20th, and the council at that time had made a decision to put the question to this council meeting on whether they wanted to refer the study matter to a different group. The Public Works Board was discussed, although I don't think it was the final decision. But I brought forward a motion in the positive form so that we can move forward with it. So this one does refer the composting study for further research to the Public Works Board.
Okay.
When would it be presented to the board?
Probably at their April meeting. We'd probably give them all the documents next week and then do the first initial presentation at the April 13th meeting. I think that's it.
Now, wait, I think we're off, because before you mentioned April 10th, and that's not our regular meeting night. April 13th is a Friday.
April 10th.
April 10th, all right.
Okay. So would they have the benefit of the presentation that we have?
Yes, we would start right from scratch, and probably bore Vicki out of her mind, but at least the other ones, I think Doug was here at that meeting too. Not Doug, Mark.
Mark, right. Mark was here.
Mark was here, so they both have a pretty good idea what'll be coming forward. She'll actually do the whole presentation. We'll try and get through it, and then we'll try and set it up for review over the summer to work out all the details.
I would like the Public Works Board to have the latitude to pick apart the proposal and answer their own questions or ask their own questions rather than just the ones that the engineer had in the report. Well, do you want this? Do you want that? Because it might be that they'll take a look at it and decide that they would recommend that we go a little bit slower and piecemeal the thing. And if they don't have that latitude, they probably won't be able to give us that kind of recommendation.
I think, though, that when you work on this, you have to let the engineer scope it first, okay? So you want to get as much information at the beginning presented and allow yourself the opportunity to think where you want to go. And she's asking questions that are kind of fishing so that you can scope it. So what you're talking about is, don't jump in and say that right away. Say, give her the opportunity to, and say, yes, we're interested in that, or no, we're not. And then at some point in time, she's going to present the options, and you're going to go, we're not interested in that anymore. We're going to head this direction. But at least at that point, then you can look at the scope of it. And then if we do scope it and we say, yes, we want to do that in the future, but we're not going to do it now, she can design the overall facility to meet the needs so that as you start to expand out, you can do that. And that's, so what we're trying to do is get an idea from the questions that she's presenting initially as to if you're heading in a direction that encompasses more, even if you take it in small stages, which can be cut up in multiple different fashions once we got an idea of what the ultimate goal is, we can come back to that and say, okay, here's where we're going to start, and here's how we're going to get there. But at least we have to know what that final picture is so that we can say, okay, 6 acres isn't going to do everything that could possibly be done on one. That's as small as you're going to get for what we almost do now. So don't come out and say, well, we're just going to do a 6-acre site now, and then, because if you pick that and then you don't have an opportunity to expand, you're done. You're back basically where we are now. So from that standpoint, we want to try and look at it and say, okay, are we just going to do the minimum type of composting? Are we going to haul away? Are we going to, there are a lot of ideas. And then as you start looking at that, you can start saying, okay, yes, we want to have a local drop-off point initially. Eventually, we would think that we would want to do our composting here. But let's work through that, because if I were, there are a lot of reasons to say we need to do all the composting here. And you really need to think through that. before you start saying, well, let's start small and haul, or have someone pick it up, or,
let's start with a expanded yard waste facility and have a place to haul the stuff to while we're getting ready to do a composting. I think that's still an option.
right, but what you're looking at from the hauling standpoint is where you're hauling,
That would be certainly something that would have to be looked at.
right? And so when you're looking at that potential, then it becomes, well, who are you going to work with? And those types of things, because if we're hauling, and we're hauling all this to a long distance, even Wolf, which was up in Waterloo, when you're hauling as much yard waste as we're potentially hauling on a regular basis, especially in the spring and the fall, especially in the fall when we're hauling leaves, you could have our full crew tied up for months.
Are you suggesting a process such as what was used for the multi-facility?
That's what I would like to see her do with the Public Works Board, yes. I would like to go through that concept and scope it out and then pull it back and phase it out and see what we can do. I don't want people to jump in right away and say, no, we're not doing that, this is what we're going to do, because I think that would be a mistake. Because when you start saying this is the way we're going to frame it, you don't get all the other additional pieces of information that could be valuable to the final decision, even if in the short term we decide to do that, which I think we would probably do. But I think in the long run, especially with the amount of yard waste that we currently take, if we add the town of Lake Mills or anybody else, you could be into a lot of hauling or a lot of yard waste, either way you want to work it. So you need to kind of start scoping that and looking at the possibilities and framing it in a way. Okay, let's look at this. You can do just brush and leaves. You can do food waste. You can do, when you do brush and leaves, you get a pretty marginal compost. When you add food waste, it gets better. When you add a little bit of the sludge from the wastewater treatment plant, it gets really good. That's what, have you ever bought Milorganite?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have. That's sludge from Milwaukee's wastewater treatment plant added to their compost. So, I mean, these are options that we could evaluate and think about, and if we want to frame it at some point in the future that's what we're looking at doing, then we could pull it back and say, hey, we're going to potentially be looking at this, but at this point, but at least she knows what the ultimate vision is so that she can create the path and then start throwing out, we're going to start at this phase and then work to this phase and then work to this phase.
I guess that's why I kind of think the Public Works Board would be able to give its time to it and ask lots of questions. And have the flexibility, more flexibility than what I saw. So.
And I anticipate that the Public Works Board would have to take it up several meetings.
Oh, goodness, I would hope so.
I would expect 6 months.
Yeah.
Probably. Probably don't have to have the engineer there every time, though. Trying to save some money. So.
Also, if the Public Works Board hits a point where they're like at a Y in the road, they could come back to the council and ask direction, can't they? Like if they say, well, gee, we see value in this and we see value in this, but we're not sure what direction you want the city to go, then they could send it to us for input on that piece.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. I want to make sure they have that freedom to do that. I agree that the Public Works Board is the right place for this to go, because I think they have much more expertise than our combined expertise. We have some, but I don't think it's as good as theirs is. And then it would come back to us at the end, right?
Yes, everything. They're just a recommending board.
Okay. Anybody else have concerns about the wording or anything in the motion?
Do you recall if there's a specific deadline by which we have to stop hauling to the old Conservation Club?
There's none that I know of right now.
Okay.
When you look at the study, and we're starting to provide more information, and you'll note that in the study, all the sites had to be permitted by the DNR. We currently claim that we're small enough, we don't need to be permitted.
That's a potential problem, though.
Yes. As we generate more information, and I don't think we're getting less yard waste than we ever have. I think we're getting more all the time, so
And how long would the permitting process take?
I don't know. I didn't ask. I know that there's a process to it, and we went over it, but she didn't give me any indication how long.
A couple months at least.
Yeah, and you have to have all the conditions that she had as minimal in that site plan would have to be incorporated, so, you'd have to, we couldn't make it work on the existing site. We'd have to have stormwater treatment, we'd have to have, there are a lot of other features we'd have to add into it.
Well, I think this is a really good idea. I think it's the right group of people to do the basic work. Comes back to council when they have something for us, and we take it from there. And, public work meetings are open to the public. They are on television, they're on the website. You can get them, see what they're saying. So if this is of particular interest to anybody listening tonight or here, like I said, you can be at those meetings, and it's possible they might even listen to you if you have something to say. I don't know how that'll be set up, so I would assume there's public. Is there questions and public comment at the? Yeah. So there is. So if you have something that would give you an outlet too. So, any questions or concerns further? Okay, then let's call the question.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Okay, thank you. Item D, Resolution 18-3, sale of public land in the business park. Rob and Kim Campbell, currently tabled. So we first of all have to take this off the table. Does someone want to make a motion to take it off the table?
So moved.
I need a second.
Second.
Okay, motion and second to take this off the table. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Good. Would you read the title?
Resolution 18-03, authorizing the sale of city-owned real estate located in the Lake Mills Business Park.
Okay, now I need a motion for the resolution and a second.
So moved.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second. Okay. And with that, we can open discussion. Steve, are you speaking to this? Dan, who's this?
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is Rob and Kim Campbell. This was on the previous council agenda in the regular meeting. Vicki brought up the need to add a deed restriction or some potential other solution regarding preservation of the how do we refer the water flood zone specifically, the flood storage area. So we drafted, Jay Lane redrafted the offer on behalf of us, he represents us, and added a clause that's on the last page right above the signatures that dictates that they agree to terms regarding maintenance and preservation of the flood storage area to be added as a deed restriction in the event that if and when this transaction occurs. Nothing else in the offer has changed from the previous review. Do you need more information on the offer, or?
I was not at the meeting that you discussed this, so I will have to have some feedback from the rest of the council on whether this does what you wanted.
It appears that it does.
The actual language hasn't necessarily been decided. I think the clause that's added in the offer suffices for now.
Yeah, there's a use of a should in one place in the language that I would prefer it to
Shall.
say shall.
Sure thing.
But that was the only thing that jumped off at me when I read it.
It'll go into the CSM as a deed restriction?
I don't know, wouldn't you just write it right on the deed?
Yeah, what I'd actually do is add it to, I think adding it to the site plan is an appropriate idea, restating it, but I would add it to the transaction document, the deed itself. We have reviewed a HUD document that has been used for deed restrictions with regard to wetlands and flood storage areas previously that HUD specifically uses. I think it's overkill in this circumstance, but that's basically what we're going to work off of when we come up with the actual restriction language.
We always do a CSM though, and historically the CSM shows the flood.
Oh, yeah, the CSM could definitely show.
And then we could just show it as a
that
note on
area.
the CSM, that's a
Yep.
restricted
And then
building area.
the deed restriction could just reference that CSM number,
Yep, that's
And-
appropriate as well.
then you're good to go.
Yep.
Now, is this the item that the gentleman wanted to speak to? No.
Item G.
Okay, I wasn't quite sure. Okay, I'll come back
And
to you
it's
on that.
my understanding that the buyers have accepted the changed offer? Okay. Is there anything that you wanted to address us on?
I might note that as we get into site plan review, we have in the past allowed buyers to back out of the deal. So, there's some, we had discussed last time that there are some site issues here, so as they try and work through those, we'll try and help them as much as possible. But if there's something that becomes impossible for them to overcome, we've historically been pretty lenient on the transaction of the deal.
It would have to come back here, though, for us to purchase the property back.
Yes.
Okay.
What we did in the last one was we swapped properties with Horizon, and but this one has a sanitary sewer issue. Really doesn't cost them any money, but it is there. And then he noted before the meeting that we require that first floor elevation to be 1 foot above the curb, and I think he said it's already 4 feet below the curb. So, like the Public Works building, it'll take some raising to get it up to the elevation that's required.
That's something you can handle,
Yes.
and we'll hear about it if and when something else happens.
Right.
Okay, that does not affect whether or not we
No, sure.
pass this or not.
I just wanted to let you know that
But that's good. No,
there are always issues involved in this.
Mhm. Well, should we call the roll on this? Okay, yes.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Okay. Good luck on negotiations or whatever. All right. Taking item E, Resolution 18-4, the Mill Pond and Channel Dredging Study Grant. So, gotta get to that.
This one does not have a prepared resolution for me to read the title
Right,
of, so.
because I don't think we're going to. Now, this again is also an item that came out of our work sessions and so forth. I'm trying to get it all to come up here. Come on, let's go. Okay. Originally, I'm going to speak for myself because I'm not sure everybody else did, but I got the impression at the night that we had the presentation on the mill pond that we needed to do something immediately. And upon getting more information since that evening meeting, I found out that wasn't the case. I think other people on the council have found out that same thing, that it isn't a matter of we have to do something immediately on the mill pond. So, Steve, do you want to say anything, like a synopsis of your memo kind of thing? Or maybe the ending of it?
Well, the final is that I don't believe that we're in any need to rush into a decision at this point. We have a lot of other issues that we're trying to resolve, and so let's see where this falls in the priority list and then try and work through that process, because we're looking at spending a lot of money over a period of time, and grants come available. They're not like they're never around. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I believe that there's probably some more data that should be gathered. In fact, I agree that I believe that, I don't just believe, I know that Patricia, I think I sent you an email.
Yes.
And Susan Graham from the DNR agree with me that there needs to be more data gathered. I want to sit down with Susan Graham and go over that information and see what she's looking at, because her memo looked like she was trying to spend a lot of money. Patricia, on the other hand, was saying, well, it's not really that way. We can do all that through these groups and volunteers and things along that line. I want to make sure that we get kind of what we're looking for, so how we scope it and how they fall into that category, and the quality of the information that then results. So I'm trying to work through that. I'm going to ask Susan, if it gets to be something very significant, if they're gonna help put up any more money on those types of things. But I got the impression that the sedimentation study was one that could be done relatively, if you're willing to take. In 1992, we got done dredging the mill pond. This was the as-built plans that showed this was the bottom of the mill pond, and now you can go out there. And so in the last 25 years, this is the amount of sedimentation that's filled in over that time period. If that's a satisfactory study, or those are the types of things that we probably need to have a discussion on with the DNR and Patricia and Brandon, and see what we can put together for additional work. We do have some money left, depending on the DNR felt that the scope of the current report wasn't significant enough in the production of research data. I think Brandon and I both felt that it covered the topics that they wanted, and that to cover more would have encompassed a significant amount more money. Mm-hmm. And so it was a conversation of, okay, where do we draw the lines here? But if she allows us to continue to use that money with what we have, and then Patricia can put up some work and things along that line, we might be able to get at least enough data to tell us, particularly the sedimentation one, how much longer we have before it becomes a real issue. I know that in my conversations with Patricia, in the last, between the dam report and this mill pond dredging report, I've read about 60 mill pond dredging reports, and they all talk about the fact that if you don't dredge, they eventually start to silt in and become marshlands. Patricia says that's not necessarily so, and not, at least not in a significant time period. Sedimentation study would give us some of that information. How you want to use the mill pond, those types of things also have to be incorporated in, but dissolved oxygen will make a lot of difference. That'll give us some information on the phosphorus, and nitrates will give us a lot of information on what's causing some of the smells, what kind of activities are going on in the mill pond that are making the changes. So I can tell you from the time I came here until now, the mill pond has experienced changes. But how much longer it could go on with those types of changes, I can't say for sure. So I think we're going to try and put together some additional information. So I think waiting is the right thing to do, not jumping off.
Can it be broken up into different parts too? Or does it have to be done pretty much all at once?
It could probably be broken up into different parts by who's doing it. I think at least 6 or 7 pieces of the information that were listed, the pH, the phosphorus, the nitrates, I think it's, the DO, the sedimentation, the water clarity, those things all need to be done. Probably, Patricia probably has a pretty good start on the wildlife and fauna report already, so that's probably not something we need to worry about.
I found it interesting, I don't know if it was your memo or hers, that upon dredging, we might get more of that milfoil.
Milfoil, right?
Yes, that was hers.
That'd be something we'd want to know ahead of time, whether or not we're going to make things worse.
Well, I can tell you that I've read enough mill pond reports that let you know that depending on how you do it, you can make it so much worse that it's hard to ever recover, and you can make it so that you hardly notice what happened. So a lot of it has to do with how it's permitted, how the work's done, who does it, and the conditions in the mill pond and the lake around it. Sometimes the mill pond and the lake just aren't going to be conducive to being dredged. It's just going to fill in. That's all there is to it. So, but I think a little bit more work will let us know.
Maybe with the flow of water through it because of the dam, it'll slow the process of it filling in a little bit.
No, actually the dam increases the sedimentation. If we'd opened it up, it probably would have left it open a little bit longer, but it would have dropped the water table too. So it would have become a more natural lake.
Are you at all familiar with the Rockdale Dam?
Yes.
That's no longer there. Is that at all similar?
I can't tell you that I know a lot about what happened at the Rockdale Dam. That's south of Cambridge. Yeah. No, I can't tell you that I know exactly what occurred there. Typically, it's not unusual to see recommendations nowadays to take the dam out. I think it's the Mullet River that goes through Plymouth. They've been going through the same situation about 10 years ago. Or did a report. Then what they recommended ultimately didn't work out, so they had a new one done by MSA, and MSA came in and said, you're going to tear the dam out or you're going to build a dam and dredge. So they're kind of working through that process. But that's what I tend to see a lot is let it go natural, or if you build the dam, at some point in time you're going to probably have to dredge it. I won't guarantee it, but I think there's a pretty high probability when that occurs. Could be a long time from now. I think the sedimentation study and some of the other information will give us a better idea. So not running off right away. Another feature is I know that we were looking at just the stormwater improvements. They're hard to separate from the channel dredging. Once you do dredge a channel, then it's like You know, you're already into some of the issues that you would worry about, like milfoil. But on the other hand, we're also looking at a total storm drainage modeling for that whole basin over there, because everything that drains to the lake has to be handled different than everything else. So we're looking at a lot, you know, how we can pull all the stormwater together and have as few of those treatment systems in there as possible.
Well, I am personally relieved that we don't have to do this today. I mean, you know, immediately. And after talking with Patricia, she reassured me also that it would be in the best interest of the mill pond to not do it immediately, because they haven't done everything that needs to be done to evaluate it. So, now, the agenda said resolution, but we don't have a resolution, right? So, do we need to have one because the agenda said it, or can we
Just make a motion.
make a motion to not do a resolution, or?
You could
Not to
table
take
the
any
item
action on applying for a grant.
Okay.
Because I think
That's why we got it on the agenda to begin
Right.
with. So,
yeah,
okay.
the issue was are we going to apply for the grant or not?
Okay. So,
And this was the decision point, and I think that's why we say,
so I'll entertain a motion to say that we do not want to go forward pursuing the grant, I guess. Anybody want to do that?
So moved.
Is that enough, Misty?
Got it.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Do you want to take a stab at reading that back, just so it's clear what we're voting on?
I have a motion and second to not proceed forward, I'm sorry, to not go forward pursuing the grant.
For the mill pond. That's,
for
any
the
other
for the stormwater improvements
Okay.
related to the mill pond.
Thank you. I knew
maybe
that
add this year.
this
or,
year,
Yeah, some
at this time.
temporal characteristics.
At this
should-
time? Poor Misty. We make crummy motions for her to write that.
Motioned, let's see here, motion that we to not go forward pursuing grant for stormwater improvements related to the mill pond at this time.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Call the roll.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Okay. All right. Moving on. Oops.
One thing I want to mention, we might, well, I know we're going to have to revisit doing the study and how we're going to finish up the study and how we're going to frame that. So that'll probably be coming forward in the next 2 meetings.
Okay. Just put it on our agenda and tell us what we have to do. Okay, item F, Resolution 18-5, claim against the city for haze. Let's go to that agenda item here. You want to read the title for that?
Resolution 18-05, action on notice of claim and claim for damages brought by Chad Hayes for tree fall damage at 404 College Street, Lake Mills, Wisconsin.
Okay. I need a motion.
I move we adopt Resolution 1805.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any necessary discussion at this point? I don't, Dan, do you have anything?
If you have questions, now we've reviewed this claim in closed session. We've also submitted the claim to our insurance company. They rejected the claim, provided us disallowance information. And I believe in our last discussion, the most recent closed session, that there was consensus on disallowing this claim.
Okay. Call the roll.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Okay. Moving on to item G, which is the item that our guest in the audience had wanted to speak to. Resolution 18-6, claim against the city for Ideal Midwest. Let me get to that item. Would you read the title, please?
Resolution 18-06, notice of claim, Ideal Midwest LLC.
Okay. Before we do that, Dan, do you have anything else you want to? Well, we should make a motion. Yeah.
To start, yes.
Yeah, somebody want to make the motion?
I move we adopt Resolution 1806, notice of claim, the Ideal Midwest LLC.
Okay, I need a second.
Second.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Now we can have discussion. Dan?
We've reviewed this claim in multiple closed sessions. We've been provided information by our consulting engineer, the project manager from Ayers on the matter. I personally reviewed the claim with council members. If you have any questions, I'd be willing to entertain those. Otherwise, I believe that the information is before you with regard to making this decision.
So, did you still want to speak to us?
If I could,
What is your name?
my name is Bryce Mass, I'm with Ideal Midwest.
Okay,
You have to suspend.
yes. Do you want to make a motion to suspend the rules for him to speak?
Also move
I need a
to
second.
suspend rules.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and, you need to vote on that?
Yes. Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Okay. You may come up to the podium, and before you sit down, you need to sign in, but you can speak first and sign second if you want.
My name is Bryce Nass, I'm with Ideal Midwest from Clinton, Wisconsin. Sit or stand?
Oh, you're fine, just right where you are.
Okay, I just wanted to, I guess, let everyone know where I was coming from with that project we did for APV. We met on site with the consulting engineer, Tom Gagg from Ayers and Associates, and after I reviewed the plan, there was a few things there, along with some concerns from the landowners about what was going to be dirt and what was going to be gravel, because they did not want to take what was a gravel usable lot and turn it into grass, because then they would not be able to store their materials or get their trucks turned around in there. So, in talking with Tom, I offered to replace a lot of the soil areas with aggregate, which is significantly more expensive if we could agree on paying planned quantities for all the items. So, it was a thicker section of dirt and a thinner section of gravel. So I agree with all his quantities. When he's really pressing the issue that we did not go over on our cubic yards. I agree with that. There's no dispute. All his calcs are, from what I can tell, 100% perfect. But I offered a more expensive material that was more user-friendly and accommodated the landowner. And we agreed in the field, and there was a new plan drawn, submitted to the DNR, that we built it according to. And just the difference in the material cost on the area that we changed from soil to aggregate was around between $7,000 and $8,000 in material cost alone. So I wasn't looking for an increase in anything. All I wanted to do was get paid in full for what we did. And then there were several other areas that he changed after we completed. I have pictures of his staking. He said it was good. And then he came back a few days later and said, and he was under pressure from the landowner. He wanted to expand another 10, 12 feet. So we filled that beyond And that's what some of the change orders were, some of those extra areas that were above and beyond what the plan called for. So I just want everyone to understand, where we were coming from on those items. I don't know if you have any other questions I can answer, but that's the basic premise of it. Is there was some discussions in the field, there's some emails back and forth, new plans drawn, and he just keeps referring back to what the bid documents and the bid specs say. So there was a lot of changes from the time of bid to the time it was constructed. So,
Any questions by council?
You're saying that the quantities his quantities are right on.
yeah.
So if your agreement was, the price was based on quantities and a dollar amount to the fill, then the documents that are presented to us are accurate.
Lump sum price. The lump sum price of the overall project needed to stay the same for me to give him more gravel and less soil. Not the line items, because some of the line items we didn't utilize in full. There were some areas that we didn't need as much paving. So we did some value engineering where we didn't need all the paving. We took those dollars and put them into aggregate. So we agreed in the beginning that we would pay, it was 61,137, whatever it was, pay that amount to do the new plan, and then a lot of the other areas, we were directed by Tom to do these additional areas, and I think one out of the four, he was willing to pay for, but the rest, he was not.
The way you're explaining that, it'd be very difficult to follow how you would shift the dollars around through value engineering without
Like the silt fence.
a way to track it.
Like the silt fence, we didn't need all the silt fence. There was silt fence that was along a gravel lot that was still a gravel lot. We were not disturbing that area, so we saved some money there. We put the silt fence where the soil was to protect the little creek bed next to us. Little things like that.
Right.
And the topsoil and the restoration, we didn't need to do as much restoration now because it was gravel, not topsoil. So we didn't have to do seed and blanket and watering and such.
Right, well, you said you didn't use the amount of blacktop or asphalt. So if you're taking all these deducts there to put it someplace else, unless you're doing the job on quantities, it wouldn't make sense. It'd be impossible to track it.
That's why you agree on the plan quantities at the very beginning. You say, we'll build you this job per the plans. You pay us in full.
Where the change orders are reduced to writing?
There was no formal change order according to the specs, no. It was a verbal handshake in the field, and I trusted him.
I have no input. Dan, do you have anything else that you want to say?
No.
I offered to take there was a second mobilization. There were some areas that were signed off on by the engineer that they were approved. And after we hauled the equipment off the site, those areas he wanted some additional gravel added to. So we had a line item for a second mobilization in there. And I think we talked a few weeks ago that we would remove that second mobilization as a way to find some common ground. It was, I think, $2,300 worth of work that, if that's what it takes to come to an agreement, I'm willing to do something like that.
Well,
So there's a difference of about $9,000?
Well, we started out at 56.5, and then I think that
The
Mr.
bid-
Drescher said we could go up to the full contract amount. Is that right?
The bid contract amount was 61,137. Their original request was 70,000 and change, I believe.
That's right.
They reduced that twice, ultimately down to 66, and that's when he removed the last mobilization charge. The only offer that we've made with regard to settlement has been the original contract price, 61,137.
so it's about 5,000.
At this point, if their offer for settlement at 66 still stands, which was rejected in closed session when we brought it up and discussed.
As this resolution reads, does staff still have the ability to negotiate if something comes? Or
For 120 days from this point, they'd have the opportunity to formally present a claim to proceed to court to sue us. In the meantime, we owe them, Ideal Midwest, something for completing this project. That absolutely is still up in the air for settlement purposes.
And staff has what they need to do that, to pay that. Steve is going like this, so.
I guess I don't understand the question, though.
In other words, we don't have to do anything further as a council. Staff can take care of the
Yes,
original
that's,
amount.
under the budget and the agreement on this contract, Steve has the authority to
Right.
pay the original contract price at any time. Other than that, this resolution specifically disallows the claim for the
The
excess
additional.
over 61,137, and that's what they would have to pursue us for if they were so inclined.
Okay. Any other questions by council? No. Want to thank you for coming tonight. Appreciate your efforts.
Who makes the decision on the final dollar amount? Is that something we can get resolved tonight?
Well, tonight we have a resolution in front of us which, well, maybe I better let Dan paraphrase. I'm not an attorney.
Well, right now, the resolution before the council is to disallow the claim. The council is the authority with regard to any excess over the original contract price. I wouldn't advise them at this point to negotiate in open session with you with regard to settling this claim.
Okay. So what would be the next step?
You would have 120 days to sue us if you're so inclined. Otherwise, we have to come to terms on what is ultimately owed and how we'll regard this, what's going to happen from there.
So will you have another closed session meeting and you'll be in touch with us?
I'd be willing to entertain an offer from you with regard to settlement during business at any time, not tonight. And I would present that offer at an appropriate time to the city council. We
Okay.
would likely discuss that in closed session and then get back to you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll call the question on this.
One
Oh, wait, go ahead, Dan.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
so in other words, what do we do?
Well, the resolution before you is worded to disallow the claim.
Right.
What that does is stands firm with regard to their claim, refusing to pay them the excess over the contract price. There's multiple issues here with regard to establishing what the ultimate amount owed to the contractor in this situation was. What the resolution before you tonight does is specifically disallows their claim. So if they feel they're justified in the claim for above the 61,137 contract price, they now have 120 days to bring formal action and sue us. That is the extent of the action. My opinion, what I've said the whole time, is that at any point during this process, we can pay out the contract price with regard to Ideal Midwest. It's budgeted, the work has been completed, everyone's acknowledged that. This dispute arose, and there hasn't been more action than that at this point.
His statement that he changed out gravel for soil is true. His statement all along, at every meeting that I attended, was that it wasn't going to change the cost. And he documented that several times in the communications he had with Tom. And so I just have a hard time seeing why we have to pay. If he'd have gone through the right process and said, hey, this is going to cost me more on gravel. But you don't do a handshake on a government job. You got to go through the change order.
And also what he said is that the contract was the contract amount based on drawings, and any little thing that he changed was on quantity. But yet he bid the whole thing, and it was all based on quantity. So we have to go by the quantities and the load tickets and the documentation of what was delivered, and we absolutely owe him for what he delivered and performed. But that's what we owe him for, because that's what the contract called out, was quantities. So that's what we should be paying off of.
And he couldn't prove that he hit the 61.
And he agreed that all the load tickets and the quantities that were presented by Dan with all his backup were correct.
Correct.
If that's the case, he's under the original contract amount.
Yeah, I agree.
I can't see paying any more than what was delivered to us.
Yeah. The only thing that he mentioned tonight that was different than what we had read previously is that he was saying the gravel costs more than the soil, but I never saw any documentation to that. Did you?
No. In the emails, he was saying it wasn't going to change the price.
Yep.
So I got to go by the quantities that he presented in the documents that we received.
Yep. Same here.
Okay, I think it's time to vote on this, so let's do the vote.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Item H, Resolution 18-7, declaring official intent to reimburse expenditures from proceeds of borrowing. Would you read the title of that, please?
Resolution 18-07, resolution declaring official intent to reimburse expenditures from proceeds of borrowing.
And this one, I think, is it Steve? Are you the spokesperson? or-
Betsy.
Betsy, you get to talk tonight. Yay.
too.
Okay,
Put
go
the
ahead.
microphone up, I can talk. Yeah, this is something that we need to do whenever we have our
Having a
capital.
little trouble hearing. I don't know
Let me put my microphone up.
Yeah.
Every time we have capital items on our budget and we're going to be borrowing, say the police department gets a squad car and they want to order that early in the year, we need to pay for that, and we don't always have the borrowing in place. We don't have the funds right away. So the Department of Treasury requires that we have a resolution stating that we are going to be making these expenditures and we're going to reimburse ourselves from the borrowing. That's all this is doing.
A lot of words there for that.
Yes.
Boy,
That's what you have lawyers for.
pardon me?
He said that's what you have lawyers for.
Yeah. Glad ours are making good use of their paychecks, so. Okay, anybody have, well, is there a motion, first of all? to
So
approve?
moved.
And
I'll
do it-
second.
Second, okay, I have a motion and a second. Does anybody have questions or comments? Seeing none, call the roll.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Okay, moves us on to item number 9, recommendations for future agendas. And also, I don't know if we can do it under this one, but we also need to come up with a date for our goal session. So, I don't know if that's where this would be. Anybody have something for future agendas other than Steve? Now, Steve, you had said on that earlier item, you said that you were going to bring something to us on April 10th, and that wasn't April 10th. Will that be the second meeting in?
That was the Public Works Board. That's
Oh,
where we
you-
would take that
You were...
composting
Okay,
presentation too.
That's what you were saying. I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you were saying. Okay. So, yes, that would make sense. Okay. Anybody have anything for future agendas? Anything going once? Not going ahead.
We missed an agenda item tonight. That was the recommendation from the Public Works Board to send a letter to WISDOT regarding the signage over County Highway V at 89. So that'll be on the next agenda.
Okay, so it
that's
isn't
the
that I
one thing
missed
that
it.
I know
It
of.
wasn't on the agenda.
Right.
Okay. And
And
what
then-
is it for? A letter from the Public Works Board?
It's a letter from the city
Yeah.
to WISDOT
Okay.
making a recommendation on signage improvements at 89 and County Highway V.
Oh. Okay, can that wait till our next meeting?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not going to do anything in it about it until it warms up a little bit.
Okay, good. Well, we certainly don't want to lose our signage. That's a big thing.
It's currently not there,
Well,
but we were recommending they add some.
Right.
so.
Right, that's why you and other people from town went to meet with them about that, right? Or back a while ago, the signage for the road construction.
Oh, no, this isn't about road construction.
What is this for?
This is about the intersection improvements that they made with the signalization and the lane changes.
Oh, up at McDonald's?
Right.
Okay, and that we want more signage there?
Well, in my opinion, there's plenty of signage there. The problem is that that intersection is so busy with all the driveways and the amount of traffic moving in and out, people aren't able to look at the signage on the side or down, and it's particularly on the pavement. That fills up fast and it's covered up. So having an arm over the road with the signs over the lanes is probably going to be a lot more visible and will allow people to adjust more appropriately.
What I also have seen, and I know other people have too, that they did improve the timing on the left turns and so forth, so it's better than it was. But when the left turn arrow, which is green, everybody's happy because the other side has a stop. But then the left turn arrow disappears, but the people coming from the west, they decide that they don't want to give the right-of-way to the people coming from the east, which once that left turn arrow is gone, they don't have the right-of-way anymore. And even just, was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. I was coming out I was in the right turn lane, and sure enough, and the guy in the middle the arrow changed, and he decided he's going to quick go. Well, he drove right in front of the car that's going west. And he shouldn't have been there. He should have stopped because he didn't have an arrow anymore. So anyway, that's part of what's happening. People are trying to say, oh, I'm going to get through. And the signage is right, but the drivers are wrong. I don't know how we fix that one.
That's more of we've discussed that one, that's more of a ticket issue.
It sure is, but you can't have a police officer there 24 hours a day.
So, I mean, that's hard to correct otherwise.
Yeah, but I mean, the car going west did blow their horn. And if I'd been thinking faster, I should have blown mine too, because he also cut in front of me, but I saw him coming, so instead of blowing my horn, I just let him go. I'm not going to run into him to prove a point. But I should have probably blown my horn too to make it more of an impact. I didn't think that fast. So, but yeah, that is a part of the problem. It isn't all signage problems. Part of it is people not following the arrows. When they disappear, you can't turn left anymore. Okay, so that'll be on a later agenda.
That'll be in the next meeting agenda.
Okay. Now, one of the things, I know at the last Gold's meeting, you had, right when you left, Vicki, you got some information. Was it the second week they couldn't do it?
The second to the second to the last week of March and the first 2 weeks of April were not dates that the consultant could do.
Okay, second, so it'd be here, this is March right here. So are we looking at this week?
Yeah, the week of the 19th through the 23rd doesn't work, and then the first 2 weeks of April don't work.
But now, there is a planning commission meeting on the 27th in March, right?
Yes.
So we do need to have that, we can't borrow that.
So we'd probably be looking at an alternative night other than Tuesday.
Mm-hmm. What if we look at that last week of March, the 28th, the 29th? That's a Wednesday and a Thursday. Are you free?
I'm available those 2 nights.
Okay, Doug, are you free on 28th, 29th?
Tell you in a minute.
Yeah, okay. What about you, Vicki?
I'm good.
Okay, then it's just Mike that we need to check with. Why don't we, instead of setting it tonight, why don't we look at those 2 dates, check with Mike Foster, and then get back to them, Cream City Marketing, and see if, and what about you guys, staff?
They work for me.
Okay, so, okay.
Was this a meeting where we were just going to meet
Yes.
just the council
It'd be
and
the council
not
and,
all the departments?
Right, it's just us.
Okay.
and our staff, but not the department heads. We have to make some decisions on which things are number one priorities and which are secondary and which are down the road a piece and so forth. So who is going to contact Mike Foster?
I can.
You can? Okay, so if you would check with Mike, and then
What were the dates?
28 and 29, Wednesday and Thursday?
Yeah, they're fine with me.
Okay, and then would you check with Cream City Marketing to see if they're free on those dates as well, Misty?
Sure.
Okay, and if and when you get a date, will you just send it to email to all of us?
Sure.
That would be helpful.
6 p.m., I assume?
6, yeah, 6 o'clock. Okay. Thank you for doing that, I appreciate that.
Sure.
You're better at it than I am. Okay, anything else? Seeing none? Meeting adjourned.
Well,
Pursuant to 1985, paren 1, paren E, paren, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. And Wisconsin Stats 19.851C, compensation and performance evaluation data of employees over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercise responsibility. So we are therefore, now we have to vote on this.
Need a motion.
Yes, I need a motion to do that. So moved. I need a second.
Second?
Second. No discussion on this, I don't think. So.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Okay, now we are going into closed session. We will not reconvene in here. We just will go to adjournment after we're done. Thank you. Sorry. I was going to go.